DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance, and it's a late one because we just sat through something very painful and arduous, and surprisingly not the VP debates. It was an actual MLS match.
Yeah, thank God we had the MLS match to distract us from what is essentially the most unimportant debate in politics, which is the vice presidential debate.
Right.
I think, how did you put it before the podcast in their effectiveness in swaying voter opinion?
The next time that a VP debate affects the outcome of the election will be the first time.
Yeah.
They're still irrelevant. The debates are irrelevant. The guy that lost all three debates last time is the current president. So, that tells you how effective these debates are. So worthless.
Oh, yeah. They're basically just an opportunity for media companies to make little clips so they can use them in their appropriate fashions to make whatever the point is that they're trying to do. So instead of us watching basically hot take debates, we watched FC Cincinnati and decided to digest hot takes of soccer, which
they were not hot. It was very cold.
Yeah, you could tell in particular from the yawn you just gave us there. It was a very turgid affair, which has become what we've gotten used to with FC Cincinnati over
the norm
the last 2 years. But here we are recording. It's after midnight on Wednesday. We're a day later than normal, later than our normal fashion in general. So enjoy this in its entirety as we try to spit out this show as quick as we can before, frankly, either one of us falls asleep.
Yeah, and I think at this point in the week, all of our content is already had the expiration date on all this content of let's talk about the weekend matches is the sell-by date's about ready to lapse on all of it. So we better get this out there and fire these things off. But first, our fantasy update.
Oh, if we have to. We do have a new leader over in the Premier League.
We literally don't. We actually literally don't have to. We choose to on a weekly basis.
It's like a weekly punishment where we're just flagging ourselves the whole way through. Either way, we have a new leader in the Premier League side of things. Our good buddy Dustin George Miller from the Cartilage Free Captain blog that covers Tottenham Hotspur. He is now sitting at the top of our table there. He ousts David Edifield's bad captains who'd been on top for 3 weeks. I fell 14 places to 34th. You improved 12 places to 82nd. By the way, you had the highest score in the league this week.
What?
A monster 112-point week.
I don't even know how I did that.
I don't either.
I guess I had Kane captained. He had 80 assists or something like that.
Something. If you had anyone captained in either of the Aston Villa or Spurs matches, you probably did well, at least on the winning side of things. And
I think I had Kane and Son. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll probably do it.
Over into the MLS league, neither one of us moved places at all. I'm in 37th. You're in 38th in a league of 39. And it's still, third straight week on top for Marin's Phil. So there is your fantasy update. As always, get involved in the leagues for an opportunity to win monthly prizes from Added Time Outfitters. Let's move on to the actual football that transpired over the last, the football we'll be talking about ended several days ago, but it did transpire over the last week.
Yes, the footy we will be discussing, not exactly box fresh, but it still did happen. We got to start with Sunday, which was just an insane day. Everything crazy that could have happened totally happened. I don't know. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with with your boys blowing up Old Trafford, or do you want to talk about the invincible leaders of the Premier League these days in Liverpool getting absolutely just boat raced?
Both are great places to start, and I feel like we'd be a disservice to either one of them to start with the other one. But we're going to start with my guys because I want a moment in the sun. We don't get a lot of them in Spurs world, particularly over the last 6 months. So I'm gonna take this, and even more so because I went into this match being kind of nervous about things. United had been kind of bad the last few times out, which usually means they're in for like a little bit of a rise. And Spurs of late have kind of struggled against them. So I was I was genuinely nervous heading into the match, and my fears were like assured less than a minute in when they were conceding a penalty. Like that's how nuts this.
That was a very here we go moment for you.
Oh,
I'm just like, all right, here it is. This is
for
this is like what
sure.
we expected.
Yeah, and it was one of those where it happened so early, and Spurs have just had a really bad kind of run of luck kind of late, especially in the Premier League, that I was so close to turning off the TV, which is something that I don't very often do. Like I usually just sit and take my punishment, but I, that had me really close, and I walked out of the room just to kind of like clear my head, and United converted their penalty. And by the time I'd walked back in, Spurs had already equalized. So my wife called me in. She's like, "You gotta get in here for this. They've already equalized," which seemed unreal. And they do that, and then before you know it, they're then in the lead, and it's like, wow, I'm really glad I didn't turn this game off. Like I'm so happy this happened. And then the red card happened, and it was all just so fast. And it was almost like you didn't have enough time to process how much had gone on, because that's that in that like 8 minute spell. You
So many,
got
yeah, so
one.
many talking points, so many moments like of
It's a
crazy,
it's a
right?
it's a match's worth of moments if you're lucky. Like some matches are significantly more boring than that.
Sure.
So it was just a wild ride. So by the time I had to like process the fairness of the red card, like my brain was already in like delirium state because it'd been tipped upside down about what reality should or shouldn't be in a football match at that point.
Shall we discuss that part though right now?
I mean, the
The
easy
red
answer.
card. Yeah, I think I talked to a few people on Twitter about it. It's like, guys, you can't retaliate. Even if you literally just like poke a guy in the face with your index finger, you cannot retaliate. Anytime
Yeah,
you retaliate, this is what happens.
it really is. And I'm not saying, look, like Lamela definitely deserved a card there. I don't think there's any question about that. I think calls for him to have gotten a red are too harsh. I think even his red, if you're ignoring the letter of the law, in the spirit of the law, it probably wasn't a red either. It should have been just a yellow too. Should have been dueling yellows if we're just talking about what would be the most fair thing. But like you also can't hit a guy in the face, even if it's a
Yep.
tap. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do it. And I think if there's a gripe to be had, it's like, well, VAR is supposed to correct these issues. They're supposed to look back, and maybe Ali would get some sort of punishment for it. I think you can say like, oh well, you know, Martial tapped him in the face, hit him in the face, whatever. That's probably a red. Maybe you can give him a yellow, maybe you give him a red for starting it, but VAR is supposed to correct that. So if there's anything to be angry about, maybe it's that. But what you're saying is exactly right. You can't retaliate, and the age-old adage in soccer is that the retaliation is what gets the card, whether it's
Yep.
fair or not. It's always what happens. And people are like, "Oh, screw Lamela," and I'm totally with you, except for he's my player, so I don't care. And like, it's master shithousery. Like,
Yeah.
it's so good in a annoying way if he's not your player. Um, but someone described it like the business-like manner in which Lamela went down. Like he got tapped in the face, and he very slowly put his hands to his neck, and he kind of like looked at Martial while he was doing it, like being like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, I have to do this."
This is gonna happen
But
now.
like, this is what has to happen. Like you know it too. And Martial has every right to be mad, but he also deep down knows, like, ah, crap, I got sucked into that black hole there. And
Yep.
is it fair? No, but I will take it now because it's my player. Should he probably have gotten VAR smacked for it? Absolutely. But that's not what happened.
But what is VAR going to even show, though? Because at the end of the day, there was still an intent to harm and to lash out, regardless if it actually did that. Right? It reminds me of the Spurs Chelsea match last year when Son got sent off. Right?
Oh, for sure.
He kicked up at Rudiger, barely grazed him, barely touched him, but there was intent. He kicked out towards him.
Oh,
He
yeah.
lashed out towards them. So even if it didn't actually really do anything to Rudiger, he still did it. He still had intent to do it.
Right. It's the principle of the law. The letter of the law is about intent sometimes. I think if you could get Lamela on something, it would be on a sportsmanship type issue, right? You could make an argument that maybe his arm to the neck was forceful and meant to hurt. But I think you could probably get him better on the idea of just, man, and the spirit of the game. Like, that's not cool. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're trying to rile him up. And while there's gamesmanship to that, in England they hate that crap. Whereas
Right.
in like Argentina, people look at that as like a valid form of the game,
Yeah.
and it's just about perception.
That's something you learn and know how to do and go, hey, this is going to give us that advantage. This is going to give us that edge. So yeah, you touch my face, I'm going to act like I've just been shot.
Yep.
Yeah, and even you mentioned what Lamela did to start the whole thing. To be fair, what he did is at least exist within the realm of a football move of I'm trying to kind of push off and get space as this free kick comes in.
Oh, for sure. Whereas a slap to the face isn't
is not there's no oh yeah, no, I was just trying to yeah, you got nothing.
Had his chin there. No, that's not at all what it was.
A fly. It flew out from Mike Pence onto his face.
That's a direct fly shot there. It's just I'm sympathetic. I understand why United fans feel angry about it. But here's the problem, right? Like, red cards happen. Sometimes they're fair, sometimes they're not. They collapsed after that red card. It was 2-1 at that point. They weren't out of the game by any stretch. This is Spurs that we're talking about. They're just as inclined to shoot themselves in the foot as anyone. But United just, they clearly gave up. And there were a few other moments of petulance where they probably could have been further punished on top of it that went escaped to the attention of the referees and VAR as well. So I think, a lot of people have been talking about, what this means for United, and I think you give credit to Spurs for what it is. But I do think that you have to really question Ole a little bit on this. You can't get upended that badly.
Right. And that back line, I mean, even before the red card, the goals that back line gave up before that, that was just a complete trash fire.
Yeah, the opening goal was just a hot mess of no one doing their job of clearing the ball out of the box, and a defender from the other team tucks it away. So it's just it's a sign that they've spent all this money, and whether or not those players are bad, I think you do have to start questioning the guy who's motivating and running the ship. And yeah, he got them into Europe last year. They're playing Champions League football again under his watch, but he seems to have a constant problem with motivating his own team. And if they do just well enough to trip and fall their way into Europe, I just don't know that that's good enough for what Manchester United say they are.
Yeah, I feel like this is so on brand for the Ole era at United, where like everything looks like it's going really well, and then everything just goes all wrong out of nowhere, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a complete disaster. And I feel like obviously even before Ole got there, we've been kind of in this constant mode of like, oh, when is the United of old? Like, when is United going to be back? When are they going to be back? And there was some times it's early on in the Ole era where we're like, oh, the United's back. He's got him back. I mean, that's what got him the permanent gig, right? And yet every time that happened, within a couple weeks, there'd be a moment like a match like this where you go, okay, maybe they're not all the way.
Yeah. To be fair to Ole, I don't think this hasn't happened to all of the managers since Sir Alex left, right? Like,
Yeah.
every one of these managers, I think, won a trophy, right? Like,
Jose won Europa.
Yep.
Van Gaal, Louis won. No, did he win one?
Did he
He
get an
may have
FA
won an
Cup?
FA Cup, maybe.
Right. But there were moments in each of these spells.
Moyes won a
Post-Sir
Community
Alex.
Shield, so you
Yeah,
got
right,
that.
probably.
His first match in charge.
But they all have shown these same repetitive patterns, and it's crazy to think it's been almost a decade probably since Sir Alex stepped down, and
7
they're
years.
still feeling the after effects of that removal. And it's like you removed the spine from that club, and they're like busy trying to like reconstruct the spine.
Well, you did that as well.
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, you lost the spine and like the manager that created this dynasty.
The brain and the spine, essentially. So,
Those are
I don't know. I mean, Spurs deserve credit, but I do think this is something that is indicative of a larger problem at Manchester United, and I don't know that it's one that's going to be rectified, at least under the current regime.
So this was the most goals that United had conceded in a Premier League match at Old Trafford.
Ouch.
So I think a couple weeks ago or a week or so ago when City got thrashed, and I had to go find out what year it was that they last did that. The answer for this one is, as far as the Premier League era, it hadn't yet happened. So this was historic in nature. Credit though, you're right. Credit to Spurs. They're playing well, all things considered.
I think so, and I don't want to get ahead of the transfer conversation here, but I think I'm feeling some momentum from a playing perspective. They had a really, really difficult week from a playing schedule perspective. They had like 4 matches in a 9-day period, which is an absurd thing to have to tackle. They not only went undefeated, but they won them all. And then the biggest match of all of them, this match against United, they went ahead and laid down a historic victory. So I'm feeling good about them. And then you add in the signings on top of it, and I'm almost feeling optimistic again. But again, it's so early in the year. I'm a little reticent to do either.
Oh, but this is when you get to be optimistic, and no one gets too angry at you for doing so. The other big one, Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2. What the heck happened?
Of the two results, this one seems far more absurd, right? Like, yeah. You could see a reality where United could get banged up 6-1 by Spurs. Sure. Like that doesn't seem...
especially if you got a red card involved, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, that kind of all bets off when that happens.
This Liverpool result against an Aston Villa side that just barely escaped relegation last season. Liverpool are this like all-conquering side,
team of the world, right?
The Champions League and the league, and their fans can pump them power directly from bars. Things that just other clubs just don't have at their disposal. it seems so out of the blue, and there's like that the predictor app that NBC has.
Yeah.
And my wife and I do it each week, and we just try to see who can like accumulate more points. And we both got butchered this weekend in general. But we also both were like, man, NBC should give the prize money to anyone who picked this score line. Like,
Right.
it's so unrealistic that anyone who had the gall to pick it deserves the money.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that had like Villa winning by multiple goals would have been thought to be an outlandish pick before that.
Sure.
So the match, like, Ross Barkley could have had like 4 goals in this match. He ended up only converting 1. It was a bit of a worldie, but he was like in on goal like every other minute in the first half.
It's funny. He was in on goal so much, it caught me so off guard that he was even playing for them now. It's like, wait, Ross Barkley, since when do you play for Villa?
At like that Thursday, I think. It was literally just like midweek that transfer out of the blue, that loan comes in. Like there was no speculation on the Chelsea end that like Ross Barkley was going to be a piece that was going to be moved in that manner. So that was like a super weird one that he just all of a sudden out of nowhere gets moved, and then B, like, oh, hey, you're starting. You're in the lineup.
All right, here we go again. So, just really just unexpected result. But I had a couple of people ask me this just from text messages this week that, like, don't you feel like the scoreline was a little lopsided? And there were some deflected goals in there. But, man, I've never seen Liverpool lay down like this under Klopp. Like, at the end of this match, they were still attacking, but defensively, like, they were out of it. And maybe they were just committing their numbers forward, and that's really what the linchpin is here. But it really did kind of seem like they were like, well, we're going to have to outgun them here. And every time they threw another man forward, it was like Villa threw another one into the back of the goal.
Yeah. It was. I mean, they get one back there in the first half, and you're like, all right, okay, they could probably climb back into this one. And then, like, a few minutes later, they concede again, and you're like, nope, it's all right. It's it's 3 it's 3-1 now or whatever. Like, it's okay. This is maybe not going to go that way.
Yeah.
I guess here's the question: is this an actual sign that Liverpool are mortals, and that this is going to be, they're going to come back down to earth a little bit, and while they still might win the league and everything, they're not going to be just running through everybody like last year? Or will this ultimately be looked at as like, this was just a weird outlier blip in an otherwise dominant performance yet again on the season?
I mean, I was predicting before the campaign that Liverpool were kind of backs against the wall a little bit this campaign, and that it'd be hard for them to sustain what they'd been doing the last few years. And they're still going to be one of the best teams in the Premier League this year. No questions asked. Top 4 side. It's unfathomable they fall that far. But I do think this is a sign that, like, that hypothesis has some merit to it. And I don't think they're going to be in a position where they're going to get pants like this many more times in the foreseeable future. But the fact that they can do that will only embolden other teams to think, listen, if Villa did that, we have a shot, and there's no reason we shouldn't be aiming for that type of thing.
Yeah, we shall see, how other teams approach playing Liverpool the rest of the way through. Let's just whip around the league real quick. We'll start with the other team in Merseyside, the actual league leaders at the moment, Everton. Real? Question mark?
I think this is going to be like
It's
our
gonna be like
ongoing.
Leicester. We're like every week we're like, okay, is this legit? Are they
Yeah.
gonna be able to keep this up?
I mean, obviously, this is different in Leicester in that, like, the likelihood of Everton pulling this off seems far more likely than a Leicester pulling this off. But given how, like, Everton have all these false starts that we've kind of experienced in the past, it's not unnatural to not make that same comparison. And I agree with you. But I think like every week that they check a box again, and this is another one of those results where it wasn't like it was the perfect outcome. Like they conceded a couple times, they faced some adversity. Um, they are being tested, and I do think there's probably some truth to the idea that they haven't really faced a good team yet. Like, yeah, they faced Spurs in that first week out, but Spurs were still a mess, like still getting their feet underneath them. And Everton hit the ground running, and obviously they're still doing that. But uh, when you get a result like this where you're not playing great, or you're not at your best all the time, you have to think that's a positive sign. Like in order to be a championship team, you have to win games when you're not at your best, and when you're conceding too, that's probably a bit of a concern. So, um, yeah, I don't think there's any reason to doubt that they are real quite yet, or aren't real. But yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting more data to try to make that decision.
Well, we might get some of that data next week, as on the 17th, when the league resumes, they host Liverpool.
A
We're gonna
decent
get
game.
we're gonna get like for the first time in probably several years, like a legit Merseyside derby.
Yeah, I
Where both
mean,
teams should be up for it.
it's been forever since Everton have won a match in the Derby. Like
Yeah.
it's been legitimately a really long time. I want to say on the like 7 or 8 years minimum. So it's been a really long run, and I think the rivalry needs some balance, right? Like there's too much of this friendly Derby talk. Like it needs a little bit of venom to it, and this is Everton's best shot, and they'll be catching Liverpool at a time where they'll be licking their wounds and will desperately want a good result of their own, not just for the derby purposes, but also to prove to their fans that they still have it.
October 17th, 2010. So exactly 10 years ago from when they are going to play is the last time Everton won this match.
Man, that's like
How about that?
that's some X-Files shit right there.
How about that? I'm trying to even think who was on that team in 2010.
Oh man, probably like
Landon Donovan?
yeah, right. Was Brad Friedel in goal for them at that point? No, I don't think he. No, Tim Howard maybe. Um, Regardless, this is a great opportunity for Everton to really show everyone, like, hey, we are real. Like, if they get a result in any capacity here, even a draw, I think would probably be somewhat acceptable, but a win would be earth shattering. And I think would truly give them a platform to believe in themselves, even. And it sounds like they are, but if they get that win under their belt, shake off that 10-year-old monkey and dump the champions on their butts, I think that will really go a long way to giving them the energy they need to prove themselves in the long run.
Chelsea get a pretty emphatic win as they roll past a pretty meh Crystal Palace side. Crystal Palace a side that I think could be better than they are, but you also have guys, and we'll see now, like now that the window's closed, if a guy like Zaha will be a little more settled on that side for the rest of the way through. But not a very great side. Chelsea handle business pretty easily. Ben Chilwell opens his account. Mendy starts. The Mendy era at Chelsea has begun.
You seem really excited about that.
Yep. it's really more about a different era ending than one beginning. But the Mendy era, here it is.
Buckle up.
Pulisic is back also. He played a few minutes in this one too, so he's healthy. He's returned. Ziyech should be ready to go once the international break is over. So Chelsea should be able to field their full a complement of players come the 17th when the league resumes. Fingers crossed.
I'm not going to hold my breath for you, but I'm sure you'll be holding your breath until that point. Let's talk about a match that probably would have been considered the craziest result of the weekend had it been a normal weekend.
Right.
Leeds won, Manchester United won. So much was made of this match ahead of time, with Guardiola basically facing off against his mentor in some respects, the guy who he's modeled a lot of his philosophy to the game off of, in Marcelo Bielsa. I absolutely loved the match preview that came from the Football Ramble, where they talked about, like, you know, if a goal was scored by Leeds, would Guardiola celebrate, like, you know, his happiness for Bielsa in that respect? And, you know, if Leeds worked out a good result for themselves, would perhaps sprint over and try to ask him for his advice after the match. Probably, which was true to a certain extent, but we got to see this play out to a certain extent, with Leeds drawing 1-1 with Manchester City.
In a match that ends and you sit there and go, how was there only 2 goals in this match?
Oh, for sure. There should have been, like,
they were just slugging at each other the whole time.
Yeah, and both teams were really going for it, and it gives you so much promise for the entertainment value that Leeds are going to provide all year long. If they're willing to go at City like this, they're going to do it with everyone. And Bielsa believes in his ability to get his teams to perform at this level, and they're going to get some really clever results as a product of that. They'll probably also get bashed a few times as a result too, but I'm here for it, and this match was a taste of what he can give us, is a masterclass in tactics and how you can get a lesser product to produce better results than a better one. And I think it was this was hands down one of my favorite matches to watch, because it was literally 2 guys who are like tacticians at heart, just trying to go at one another.
Yeah, no, it was a good one. It would have been, as you said, the match of the week had basically all that Sunday stuff not happened.
Yeah, City are in 14th, by the way, 14th.
Well, at least they're ahead of United. I think United are below them, right?
Yeah, they are. But this is the thing, for City, though, who have aspirations for title consideration, right? That they've already dropped something like 7 points so far this campaign, 5 points so far this campaign. That's a lot of points in the long run, and it'll be interesting to see if they don't win the title, how close they are, and what a couple bad results at the start of the season could do to derail their entire campaign.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for them, Liverpool has at least dropped about half of that. They dropped 3 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, we shall see. I don't know. Was there any other matches that you wanted to hit on? Arsenal won or something against Sheffield? I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
it was in non-convincing fashion.
Yeah, they did win in non-convincing fashion. I think it's worthy of mentioning that West Ham, after posting a big win last week,
the other one.
Yeah, they got another big win again, this time 3-0 over Leicester, who had been perfect prior to this point themselves.
Right. And hot off of that Man City thrashing.
Exactly.
Just lay an egg.
So David Moyes cooking up some potential magic over there in his corner of London. So suddenly they're looking like a decent team at the moment. Although we all know how West Ham tend to operate and where they tend to end up with things when everything's said and done. But a decent result for them nonetheless. But yeah, it was a fun weekend of Premier League football. Newcastle also after a good result themselves too. But the Premier League continues to toss out some of these really intriguing, interesting results that maybe we weren't anticipating in any capacity.
Yeah, maybe not. Let's move to the other big thing that would normally carry this show any other time, but obviously the Sunday scores were so outrageous that we are just now getting to the other big thing that would happen, and it was transfer deadline day. A lot of moves happening, a lot of moves not happening. I feel like there was just as many of like moves that just didn't ever come to fruition. We can kind of start there. Manchester United spend the majority of the window chasing Jadon Sancho to no avail, and then in the last 48 hours pull off two moves of different interests and bring in Cavani and Telles. I don't know what do you make of those moves and the move that didn't happen?
I mean, not all of them are great players, right? Like let's start there. Cavani, yeah. This feels like a repeat of Falcao, like
sure.
How many years ago at this point? And we all know how well that panned out for them in that respect too. They should have been chasing defenders. Like I don't understand why. They have a decent attacking core of players, right? Like they already have that. And not that you wouldn't want a Jadon Sancho or whomever else, but when your problem is defense, why are you spending your money, potentially hundreds of millions of euros or pounds or whatever delineation of currency you want to utilize to unattach one of these players too? So this club spends with no plan in mind, like no plan. And it's so amazingly clear, and that they're able to achieve anything with their slapstick buying habits. It is a little amazing, but with the amount of money that you spend, you're gonna get some decent players in the door one way or another.
Yeah, so they get Cavani basically what that was on a free. I don't know, like does Cavani add a whole lot? I mean, I guess it's a more out-and-out striker to put at the top of that attack. You're also still bringing in a guy that's like kind of on the back end of things and kind of has been picking up injuries left and right. Like, what are you really going to get out of this one?
You would suspect that he's going to be a super sub, right? Like that's the idea here. Maybe he gives you a start or two in a cup competition, in the Caribou Coffee Cup or something like that. And then, then you can bring him off the bench in a league game when you need, some experienced striker or, whatever it might be. But yeah, I'm with you. It just doesn't strike or smack of a move that makes a ton of sense from United's perspective, especially when you look at the players that they have on the roster now.
So Edison Cavani, Premier League goals, 5.5 over under.
I'm going to take the under.
Okay. I'll take the over. Over.
I already took the under.
The other move that didn't happen is there was another team, I forget their name. They were looking for a center back, and they ended up not doing that. They had options, allegedly. Spurs wanted a center back, was shopping for a center back. There was some Rudiger rumors. There was some other dudes from other places. I don't even know.
The Rudiger move seems so unlikely. I did enjoy.
That one actually seemed the most likely.
Maybe, especially given the turnover with Chelsea and all those things considered. But it seems unlikely that Chelsea would assist us in any capacity.
But at a price.
Well, sure. They needed that center back, but at the same time, I look at all the other boxes they checked in the transfer market that they needed. They needed extra attacking options. They got that in Bale. They needed new left and right backs. They got those in Reguilón and Doherty. They needed a new holding mid. Højbjerg has come in, and I honestly think he will be potentially one of the signings of the season, just with how much quality he brings to that role. They just and they brought in a striker. We signed a striker. Those are things that Spurs don't normally do. They filled needs. And the center back was the only one that didn't get checked. And while I would have loved to have gotten one, and I have my concerns about what they have at their disposal still, I can't be anything but happy with this transfer window. Maybe I won't be in 6 months' time, but at least right now, looking at what we've done and the people who've gotten to perform so far, I'm pretty damn happy with how Spurs navigated things.
Okay, let's hit a couple deadline deals that did happen, and then I want to kind of get your overall kind of who won the window.
Okay.
Arsenal make a move. They bring in is it just pronounced Party? I feel like that can't be it.
I think so.
All right, we'll go with it.
Party.
Yeah. So they bring him in from Atleti. I don't know. I mean, is this going to be an impactful move for them? Is this addressing needs?
Arsenal have lots of needs. I think, and what those needs are, they're not even 100% sure about sometimes, I think. This is a club where, like, I feel like they're in a bit of a flux right now. They have got some really good attacking talents, but they're still trying to figure out, like, their back end and their midfield, and Arteta has vision, and I would suspect that Partey finishes or fits into that vision that he has. But they're clearly not a finished story at the moment. Like, they're putting this team together still in a way that I just don't know. I think they had a good window, but I just don't know how good of a window it is quite yet.
Fair enough. And then Everton bring in Godfrey. From what was that, Norwich, right?
Yeah.
That's again another solid move.
Yeah, I mean, there are good. I feel like there have been a lot of good moves kind of being made across the spectrum of the Premier League clubs this year, right? Like, a lot of these teams, some of the relegation candidates are making good moves. Some of the, Aston Villa made that great move to bring in Ross Barkley, and it paid instantly for them. There's some ambition that's being shown as clubs are trying to protect the money that's available to them through the Premier League, through investment in their squads. And this has the potential to make the league a lot better this year. And hopefully, and I think we're going to see a lot of competition, in particular for those, like, mid-table slots, like from like 2, 3 down to like 10.
Yeah. One other thing I guess we need to also mention is the, like, gigantic list of dudes that are currently free agents.
Yeah.
And, like, what happens to a lot of these guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, this year more than ever, I think, was prone to throwing out this type of year. Like, every year there are a bunch of unattached guys that are just without a club, and what ends up happening is a lot of them will end up signing for teams 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks down the line as injuries mount and people look to make signings. Because the thing is you can register new players. You just can't transfer a registration outside of these transfer windows, right?
Right.
So I'm not shocked that we're seeing a lot of these floating out there. COVID just
I was gonna say, is this a COVID economy kind of thing?
Yeah. But I think people are looking for it more now, given the COVID economy, and that there's probably a bit of this every year that people are just a little naive to.
So Nathaniel Klein, Daniel Sturridge, Danny Welbeck, Jack Wilshere, Pato. Speaking of aging strikers that went to Premier League clubs. Ben Arfa, Borini, Mandzukic, Valencia, Kagawa. Yeah, I mean, those are some decent names. Where do they go? I guess. All right, here's the one I want to throw out.
Is Major League Soccer, right? All the answers are Major League Soccer.
How many of those by December of this year are technically affiliate? We'll go January, because that's when most of the business is done for MLS. Is in MLS. How many of these guys are in MLS come January?
At least two. I mean, it's a nebulous, like, how large of a group are we talking about here? I think some of them are bound to end up in MLS. Like, can't you see Daniel Sturridge taking like a heater contract from LA Galaxy? He'll sign on like a TAM deal for like a little over $1 million a year just so he can come and chill in LA. He'll get like banged up second match he's here, and then he'll just collect a paycheck for the next 3 to 4 months.
Just do some snake arm dance TikToks and just kind of let it ride.
Yeah, bounce over to Las Vegas if he needs to.
What about a guy like Wilshere Welbeck? I mean, again, kind of with Sturridge, these are two guys that are still, not even 30 yet. These are essentially former England national team players. You feel like there's got to be a legit market out there for them, right? Or are the wages just going to be that high that it's going to really limit where they're going to go? Is that what it is?
I doubt the wages are so high. Like, there's probably someone in MLS that's willing, but maybe it's just MLS teams are wising up to this. Like, they know they don't need to pay over the odds for a guy who's at the tail end of his career. Isn't getting regular minutes with any of the teams that they've been with recently anyway. And will that really help them to bring in that type of player? I think we're starting to see MLS teams move away from that.
Let's go back transfer-wise. Who won the transfer window?
The agents.
They did all right for themselves.
Yeah, they usually are the ones who win it. I'm biased. I thought Spurs had a tremendous window. I think the only other team that's in that conversation, there's two teams that are in that conversation. Chelsea, and it's easy to forget that you guys had such a good window because you did your business so early on, or even as early as last January. But I think Everton too, like the proof is in the pudding with the moves they've made and where they currently sit in the table. So, it's tough to judge how a team performed in the transfer window when we're like a game in to how they did, and we won't truly know until teams have had a chance for their new players to bet in and get comfortable and start playing. But I'd say those three, at least as far as the Premier League are concerned, probably had the best windows out there.
Who lost the window?
Fulham, because they're not doing anything again.
Hey, they got Loftus-Cheek on a loan.
Good. I mean, he'll help them, but that's kind of one of those things. Like they came up last time and they got burnt by spending a ton of money, and now they probably feel like they shouldn't. So I don't know. There are lots of people who probably won and lost that we can't think of here, but I would say that who lost it. Fulham's probably maybe your front runner in the Premier League side of things.
All right, let's go stateside. A few little notes to hit on. The U.S. men's national team has now decided that they're going to hold an October camp. Okay. Obviously, only players in the U.S. are joining up for this one because obviously travel restrictions would make it a little difficult for guys in Europe to make the jump.
Yeah.
So, but they're not going to play a game. They're just having a camp.
I think that's valuable if you're not going to have games scheduled. Berhalter, and we've talked about this a lot on this podcast, he is a system manager, and he needs time with players to help them learn the system. So I'm
I
all
mean, I
for.
guess, but, like, all the dudes that, like, we're all excited about and can't wait for them to, for that next national team match where they're all playing together, none of them are going to be there.
Well, I mean, if they're not playing any games, I mean, do you blame any of their clubs for not releasing them?
No, I don't. I just, if we want the guys that are actually going to be getting minutes in meaningful matches to be there and involved with the system, well, that's not happening this time around. So we're just Berhalter's just working the system on a bunch of dudes that ultimately won't play meaningful matches for the U.S. men's national team.
Or I think you can look at it from the angle of they're prepping the guys who will fill in the slots around these meaningful pieces that won't be there. And I'm sure Berhalter would call those guys in if he could. But too, like these guys are playing in world-class clubs. You would presume that maybe they'd be a little bit more adept at adjusting in a way that maybe some of these other MLS guys who will get a shot in this camp won't have the ability to do.
Other bit of news: New York Red Bulls hired a coach. They actually paid a transfer fee to what was it, Barnsley, for this coach.
Yeah, it's wild.
Gerard Struber.
I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, bald guy.
So are we sure it's not Yap Stam?
It might. I don't know. Check what did Getty Image say the picture was.
Ooh, good question. We should check the caption there for sure. How about DC United? And not only are they the worst team in MLS at the moment, but they had probably one of the lowlights I've heard about in recent history for a team where they subbed in a player, Knuths in this situation, who wasn't actually on the match day roster.
How did they have to forfeit the match? I don't understand what's happening then.
No. In fact, they quickly realized it and pulled him back off the pitch. They were not docked a sub for that, which is mind-blowing because I think that's what the rules state is supposed to happen. But not only that, but like I don't know that any sort of sanctioning's happened for it yet. The league hasn't announced anything, at least as of from what I've seen. But I think the last time this happened, a team got fined $100,000 for it. Like that is a non-inconsequential amount of money, especially in MLS world. And it's just another I like the guy, but how is Ben Olsen still in a job, right? Like this isn't the first year he's been carrying the wooden spoon team around. And he's having mistakes so bad that he's subbing in a player that isn't even listed on the game day roster. And yeah, he's not the guy who writes down that sheet of paper, but it is ultimately his responsibility. And I just, man, this seems like a hallmark sign of a coaching staff that are like adrift at sea, where they didn't even know if a guy was rostered for the day before they put him in the match.
Just important bits of info like that. Nothing too major.
Yeah. Also, they conceded in the 3rd minute in that match and then conceded in the 4th minute tonight. So there's that.
So a 1 minute improvement on their defense.
Way to go, guys.
Let's wrap this up. Winners and wankers. Who's your winner?
My winner and wanker are related this evening.
Okay.
My winner, I'm going to go to. I probably should have done this a couple weeks ago, but it's worth mentioning now because they took action again, and that is San Diego Loyal of the USL Championship and their head coach, general manager Landon Donovan for having
minority owner.
For having them walk off a week after they denied or tried to deny taking a point over a racism issue. They decided to walk off the pitch over a homophobic slur that was thrown in their direction of their player Colin Martin by Phoenix Rising's Junior Flemings. And, basically the referee heard it. The referee would not red card the player. The opposing team even said they heard it. Their coach would take no action. And Donovan decided, you know what, we're not doing this. And we're going to walk off the field and we're going to forfeit the match if that's what it comes down to. And this isn't just like a match that it didn't matter for. Like, they had to win in order to qualify for the playoffs.
Right. It was the end of the season.
So by forfeiting, they shipped their playoff concerns off over principle. And that's, man, in modern soccer, you do not see that. And that's the safety of something you can do in closed systems where there's no relegation or anything along those lines.
Sure.
But it doesn't hollow out the point any less. And that Donovan has twice now had his team stick out their necks and say, like, we're gonna do this the right way. That's totally deserving of praise. And more power to them and their players and the entire organization for showing that kind of strength.
Super awesome situation that they, as you said, put it, like they basically threw their playoffs away for the sake of standing up for the right thing. My winner, it may not be standing up for an injustice like that, but an injustice of its own, and a guy who does seem to be one who always likes to help out when he can. News broke early. The first transfer news we heard was the sacking of Gunnersaurus on Monday.
I mean, what an incredible move by Arsenal. Like a club that their fans and them really preach this whole idea of, form is temporary, class is perfect,
right,
or, permanent. And man, and after their players took a bunch of wage cuts, so they wouldn't fire any of their staff, and then
they did. Then they laid off like 55 people.
Yeah. And now they're laying off the part-time dude who wears the mascot uniform.
So who had to come in and rescue this situation?
Oh, I know.
It comes in and rescues situations, except for when it's actually on the field. And that's Mesut Ozil. He basically is saying that he is going to just pay the wages, whatever they were. So this guy who had been doing it for years, he had been dressing. I mean, this is what he did. This was his contribution to his club, was dressing up as Gunnersaurus. And Ozil's going to pay so that he can stay in the costume and stay with the club.
I mean, that's a great gesture, and one that he has a track record of doing these types of things, and speaking out for those who are less fortunate. So a great move on his part, but man, Arsenal just
would have been a cooler move if Stan Kroenke just didn't fire him.
I know, right? Billionaire fires part-time freaking costume wearer. Like, just, oh my gosh. Anyway, my wanker, I'm going to go back to the incident I mentioned a moment ago, and directly basically throw under the bus the opposing side here, and that's Phoenix Rising, and in particular their head coach, Rick Shantz, for his response to Donovan refusing basically to sanction his own player. And then when Donovan said that they were going to walk off the field, he goes, he didn't mean it. They're just playing soccer. And it's kind of like...
Yeah, but that's the problem.
That's
identified the issue.
The problem. Like, if we keep ignoring it, then stuff like this will continue to be an issue.
That stuff like that is deemed just part of soccer and just part of sports. And that's the problem.
Nah, not having it. Not having it. What about your wanker?
Don't worry. He's only issued like 3 retraction statements to his original. There's an open mic and a video camera that caught me saying all that stuff to Donovan. Let me back like 3 different times.
How many ways am I going to need to apologize today?
My wanker, not even soccer related. It's just been bugging me all week. Someone punched Rick Moranis in the face. Like Rick Moranis. Like, it's freaking Rick Moranis. The dad from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids just got sucker punched in the face.
I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Why? Who would do that? Who would do such a thing? I believe that person's still at large.
It was not me.
Okay. I mean, it wasn't me. It took place in New York City. So, I mean, I didn't have you on the suspect list to begin with, but yeah. What are we doing, guys? Why are we punching Rick Moranis in the face?
Maybe he refused to shrink that person down to, ant size.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Why are we doing it? Why did it happen?
Why are we doing it indeed? Well, that's probably the best way to end this week's show with a Rick Moranis appearance, which is definitely a first for this podcast. If you'd like
hopefully not the last.
Yeah, hopefully not. If you'd like to get your takes in or have a question for either of us, please get in touch. Jeremy's at Jeremy Lance on Twitter. I'm at Wrong Side of Pond. Until next time, we'll be chatting with you soon.
See ya.
Yeah, you call me out like that. Yeah, you made me blush like that. I done been in one night, leaving doesn't feel right. We can live a life like that. I love how you move like that. I love how you kiss like. Maybe we out together, fuck I love the weather. I get to your side like that. Side like that. Side like. I get to your side like that. Let's spend the night in rings and virtual.